What's up, guys? Welcome to another video on our JavaScript course. Today we're going to talk about variables in JavaScript, what they are, what they do, how to create them, and why. I'll show you why they're super useful with some practical examples of using variables at the end here. We'll make a little mini project or two. So variables in JavaScript and in programming in general. I'm just going to pull this W3 Schools article up here. But what variables are is they are basically containers for storing data. That's a great way to put it. So basically, you can assign data like numbers or text or true or false or anything you want to a variable by doing what's called declaring it with a keyword. So the three keywords in JavaScript that you use to declare variables are var for variable, and then there's also let and const. So by putting var, let, or const in front of something and then writing some more code, you're basically declaring or telling the browser that you want to make a variable. So here's an example using the var keyword. So var, so you have the keyword that tells the browser you're going to make a variable, and then you can name your variable whatever you want. So it can be X, it can be Y, Z, it can be ice cream, it can be Bob, it can be trucks, like whatever you want to name your variable. And then you use the equal sign to assign a value to it, just like you would like in math, and then you put what you want. So in this one, X equals 5 and Y equals 6, and then var Z is X plus Y. So yeah, that's basically the gist of variables. They're super useful. I'm going to show you, like I said, why. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our code, into our course files. And then, so I'm going to go into my JS course files here that we've been working on for the course. And I'm going to go create a new file. I'm going to name it 4-js, or we'll just name it 4-variables. How about that? Let's keep it simple. .html. And then I'm going to get my boilerplate HTML code set up here. I'm just going to name my document JS variables. And then I'm just going to create some script tags here in my HTML. And we're going to write all of our JavaScript just right in our HTML and script tags for this lesson. And then I'm going to go ahead and go live with live server extension on Visual Studio Code. And there we go. We have our little live web page here. So this will update every time I save it. And we'll log some variables to the console, and we'll do some cool stuff here just to show variables. So as I said before, there's 3 ways to declare variables. So we'll do first a var variable, say var, and then we'll say var, let's do first name equals Bob. Okay. And then let's log this to the console. So let's say console.log first name. And then I'm going to go over to our web page. I'm going to right click and hit inspect and go to the console. And we logged first name. Let's get rid of this. There it is. All right, and there's Bob, okay? So let's do another one. Let's say var last name, equals builder. And then we'll just copy paste this here. Our console.log, we'll say this time we want a console log last name. Boom, we save, and there's builder, okay? So we're creating variables, they're working. So again, we're declaring them by first using the keyword var. Then we're naming it, and then we're putting an equal sign, and then whatever data type we want. So this is text, or also called a string. So we use quotes, and we put whatever text we want in here, okay? Another thing you might notice is the way that I'm naming my variables. So I didn't spell first name right, so I'll spell that right. FIRST. You'll notice that, so first name is 2 words, but we can't, when we name variables, we can't put a space. That's a no-no. It's not going to work. It has to all be together. So usually how you'll name variables when there are multiple words, if you have like a multi-word variable in JavaScript, you'll use what's called camel case. So camel casing is The first word is lowercase. Of the first letter is lowercase, and then the second letter, the first letter of the second word is uppercase, like that. So first name. Same thing here. Last name is got an uppercase N there to separate them. So same thing if I was to make a 3-letter one, or a 3-word variable. So let's say 1, 2, 3. So the third one, again, I capitalized the T on 3. And then we could put that equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay. And notice how here, this time I used numbers. I didn't use text. You can also declare variables and put any kind of data type you want. So numbers, string text. You can do true, false. We could say var, still, plain. Maybe you're making a game, is equal to true. So that's a Boolean. You can do an array. So we haven't gone over this stuff yet. I'm just showing you guys. So var, we can put fave foods and then make it equal to an array. So I can put steak, chicken, and say pizza. And then same thing. So we can console log all these. Let's just do that. Let's get in the habit of doing that. Go ahead and do it with me, guys, because you're going to be using the console a lot. So you might as well get the muscle memory. So var 1, 2, 3. Notice how since we did a number for this one, it's purple instead of a string, which is just regular white text on mine. We can say console. Let's just copy this. Console.log still plain. And then we have true here. And then we can console.log, and in the parentheses, we'll just put fave foods. Okay, and then there's our array. So I know we haven't gone over those yet, guys, but we'll have dedicated videos to arrays, Booleans, which is true, false. So let's just label these for future reference, so you can start getting these in your head. So that was a Boolean, array. This one is a number. Or in programming, we call numbers integers. And then this is a string, which is just a fancy way of saying text, yeah? Okay, so again, that's declaring a variable. So keyword, what you want to name it, and value. So you can also, there's a bunch of other naming conventions for JavaScript variables, so we can just look them up. JavaScript naming conventions. Variables. Yeah, 10 JavaScript. And guys, this is for all. I know we're learning JavaScript, but like all coding languages, pretty much you can do the same thing. So in this example, they have the first letter. They have all of the first letters capitalized for multi-word variable names. This is regular Camel case. This one's just all caps. I've never seen that. But those all work, but honestly, like the best thing to stick to is just the Camel case that I went over. That's how you're going to see all, developers, if you work with other developers, they're all going to use JavaScript variables like this, pretty much. Just Camel case, that's like the standard. 2 other keywords that we can use, as I showed you earlier, called let and const, and those also create variables. And those were invented, let and const were invented in like 2015, I think, when there was a big update to JavaScript. And there's a reason why they were created. It's because with var, it just has like a lot of quirky things to it that can end up ruining a program if you make one in vanilla JavaScript. If you make like a medium-sized to large-sized application, just some of its behaviors are kind of weird, and they basically don't make your code very robust because you can just do crazy things. So the biggest thing that you can do with var variables, which is like a big no-no in programming, is you can redeclare the same variable and give it a whole different value. So what does that mean? So we have 1, 2, 3 here, and it has the value of 1, 2, 3, which is logical. But if I wanted to, I could come down here and say var and just say the same variable again and put it equal to 4, 5, 6. And then we can console.log 1, 2, 3 again, right below it. And then save it. Oops. Save it, and then look. It worked. It let us redeclare it with a whole new piece of data in here, a whole new value, which is a big no-no. Because what if we were making like a big project with multiple developers, and one developer wasn't aware that I already had a 123 variable, let's say on line 22, and the other developer's working way down here, and it's like line 2,500 of the code. And then he does the same thing. He makes a variable called 123 and gives it some kind of different value for some reason. That would just break the whole application and ruin it. Okay, so that's why let and const. That's the big reason why they were invented. There's other reasons why they were invented that we're not going to completely go into in this lesson because this is just a beginner lesson. But I'm going to link this article in the description. You can read it. It's on Free Code Camp, written by this lady here, and it just explains all the differences between var, let, and const. The biggest one is the one I just told you, the whole like being able to redeclare something and give it a whole different value, which is just crazy. There's also other reasons why they were invented that are a little more complicated, but you can read this whole article and it'll explain all that to you in great detail. It's a really good article. So again, I'll link that. I recommend you guys go ahead and dive in and read that after this lesson just so you can get more info on that, okay? So let's do some let and const stuff. So let's do a variable, let's see, let. We'll say let, and then we'll say, we'll just say fav color. So let, my favorite color is black. So we'll save, and then we'll console.log that out. And we'll say fav color. And boom, black. So that works, okay? So let works. So the thing with let is, what you can do with let variables is you can change the value of them, but you can't totally like redeclare them like we did up here. That will not work. So let me just show you that. So let's just try it here, and I'll say let fav color equals white. You can see we're already getting an error. We're already getting the squigglies here. Let's try to console.log it down here. And yeah, so it's not working. It says uncaught syntax error. Identifier fav color has already been declared. So you can't read. This is called redeclaring it when you put the keyword in front of it. But what you can do is we can get rid of the let. So let's actually copy this. Let's comment this one out. Leave it there. Copy this down. Let's get rid of let in front of this. And now we just say fav color equals white. And look what happened. Fav color white actually did work because I didn't completely redeclare it with the keyword, but I did just change the value. So you might say, like, what's the point of that? I thought we shouldn't ever do that. Well, you shouldn't ever do anything like that, but where let variables come in is, let's say you have two pieces of data that are going to equal another piece of data, and you want to put all of those into variables, but the end result data, the data or the end result value might change. So that'll happen a lot in like math if you're doing like math calculations. So just to illustrate that, so let's say you have like an e-commerce website and you have like different prices for different stuff, but sometimes stuff goes on sale periodically, and that all has to be changed in the back end of your code, right? So let's say you're running like JavaScript on the back end of your code with like Node.js. You could have a variable. So we'll use const for here. So this is the third way of declaring a variable. Const variables, you cannot change their value at all. You can't redeclare them, and you can't change their value later on. You can't do anything. You can't, and we'll show you that after this, but we'll say const price1 equals, we'll just say 5. And then below it, we'll say const price, const price2 equals 6, okay? And then we'll say we want to make now another variable of total, where it just takes the total of whatever variables we want. So let's do 3 prices. Say const price 3 is equal to 7, okay? So now let's do another variable. Let's use a const. We'll say const total equals price1 plus price2. And then let's console.log the total. Okay. All right. So we have price 1 plus price 2, so 5 plus 6 is 11. So we did get 11 in our console. That is correct. But let's say that we want to change this up a little bit on our const variable. So let's say that instead, like our app changes or something else goes on sale, and instead we want the total to be different. We want the total instead to be price 2. Or sorry, total equals price 2 plus price 3. Yeah? So let's say that we need to change that because something happened or something's on sale. We have to switch our pricing around and we have to get a new total. Well, as you can see here, we just said total equals, now it equals price 2 plus price 3, and we console.log total. And we can't do that because we can't have a new assignment to a constant variable. It has to remain this up here where we declared it. We can't just change it like we can with let. So this is a great example of where you would use const, but you'd also want to use let with const so that you can change stuff. So let's change this from const to let so that we give it a little more freedom. And now it works. No problem. Okay, so now it's 13 because now we have 5 plus 7, 13, right? Or sorry, we have 6. So now it's 13 because we have 6 plus 7, and that works out because now we're using the let variable and not just const. I kind of let the cat out of the bag with the last variable type, which is const. And const sounds just like it does in English. It means constant. Your value has to be constant. You can't, when you declare a value with const, you cannot change it at all. You can't redeclare it. You can't just do total equals like we did. Like it has to remain the same. And const is really good, and this is actually the keyword that you're going to want to use the most to declare variables in JavaScript, because it'll make your code super robust, and it'll make it so that people can't make changes to variables or reassign stuff whenever they feel like it, because once you use const, you lock that value into place. So again, that'll be really useful if you make a larger application with multiple developers, and then you know for sure, like once you declare a value with const, nobody can mess with it, and if they do, it'll throw an error and it'll show which line it's on, and then they'll realize that you've already have a variable declared with const. So with all of that out of the way, so what I want you to get out of this video, guys, is that there's 3 ways variables save data. They're really useful. There's 3 ways to do them in JavaScript: var, let, and const. Var is off limits, so var is a no-no. Let should be used when you're working with some kind of data that can be changed, like in our example down here where we changed what prices equal what. So if you know that in the future the value of a variable can change or will change because it's like math or something like that, use let. And then if you're using anything else that the data type, the data or the value should and can never change, you should be using const, which is 90% of the time. All of your variables should be const. Okay, so let's do a couple practical examples with variables, because just this theory stuff might not get into your head exactly what's going on. So the first one I want to do is we'll use a variable to grab onto an HTML element and run an event and have something happen with that element with the using variables and event listeners and stuff like that. So let's just make a button and put its type as button, and then I'm going to give my button an ID of btn. Okay, and then I'm going to say my button is the button text. Okay, and there's our button. Now that's in the HTML. Now I'm going to go back into our JavaScript down here, and I'm going to grab onto that button and I'm going to assign it to a variable. Okay, so I'm going to say const. Remember, we want to use const whenever we can. So we're just grabbing this button. That's not going to change. So we're safe to use const. We don't have to use let, and we're never going to use var. So I'm going to say const. I'll just call my variable, I'm just going to name it btn just to keep everything simple. And I'm going to say that's equal to document.getElementById. So what does that mean? That's plain English. It might look confusing, but it's saying document. This is our document, this web page. And we're saying .getElementById. So we're saying, hey, grab an element by an ID name. We have an ID name of button. And then we're going to do parentheses, quotes, and put our ID name in there. So const button. So this variable button is now equal to this HTML element. And we can confirm that by doing a console.log of btn. And look, it shows our element down here in the console. Pretty cool, huh? So there, we assigned our button to a variable. Now we can do stuff with this button, okay? So now we can just say btn. We can just type that out for short instead of typing out a bunch of other stuff because we just say the element to button. btn equals this now, okay? We'll say dot add event listener. And we'll say on mouse over, I think is how you do that. Let's see, because oh, it's just mouse over. Sorry, on mouse over is the old way. So mouse over, that means when you hover over something, do something, okay? So we'll say mouse over, and don't worry about all this code. We will go in depth in its own video. It's just an example. And then I'm going to run a function, which is just a block of code that you want to run separate of everything else. And we're going to say, I'll just put an alert in here, which is just like a message from the browser. We'll say alert, you moused over the button. Okay, so let's see if that works. So my variable, again, let's go over this. I assigned our HTML button to a variable called btn. I added what's called an event listener onto my button that called mouse over, and then I ran a function that said, hey, when somebody mouses over the button, run an alert, which is a text box that says you moused over the button. Okay. Hey, it worked. Okay, so you moused over the button. Okay, okay. So it'll do it as many times as I want it to. So that's one practical example that you're going to use a ton whenever you build anything in JavaScript. You're going to be grabbing HTML elements and putting them into variables and then manipulating them with either functions or event listeners or something, right? That's a huge use case of variables in JavaScript. The next one is going to be when you're doing like calculations, so with data, okay? So let's say we wanted to do a calculation of kilometers to miles. So let's make a variable called, we'll say const kilometers to miles. And we'll put that equal to 1.60 because it's about like 1.6, 1.60. 1 kilometer is like 1.60 miles, right? Let me see if that's right. Or no, 1 kilometer, 1 mile is 1.60 kilometers. So let's actually do that different. Let's say miles to kilometers. Okay, so we got 1.60 here. And then let's say we'll do a console.log, and we'll say miles to kilometers, which is that 1.60, and we'll say times 40. So that should give us how many kilometers are in 40 miles. And when we ran that and saved it down here, it says about 64. So let's see if that's accurate. Let's go to Google and we'll say miles to kilometers. So again, 1 is about 1.60. Okay. And what did we say here? We said times 40. Let's say 40. And it is. It's 64. Okay. So we can use other JavaScript methods if we want to be super exact and get all those decimals, but we're not going to do that here. But now that you have miles to kilometers is equal to 1.60 saved, you can do a whole bunch of different equations, and you can even make this into like a whole unit converter if you wanted to, which is on the back end of this code. There's some code like this, and it's just they just added a little HTML and made a little unit converter with JavaScript. That's basically all that is. Okay? So those are just two little practical examples of variables that I wanted to show you. We went over what they are, how to declare them, and yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know for variables. So, all right, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.